This is MC Fireside Chats, a weekly show devoted to the outdoor hospitality industry, hosted by Brian Searl and Cara Csizmadia. You'll hear from special guests that focus on topics to help your business succeed, all backed by Modern Campground, the most innovative news source in the industry.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MC Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks, here back, as always, finally, from like 7.5 years since she last has been here, Cara Csizmadia from the Canadian Camping and RV Council. I thought you quit on us. I legit did.
Yeah, I just disappeared, went into hiding. No, I was at the cabin in BC. Fortunately for me, there is no Wi-Fi or cell reception or any of those things there. So when I go there, I truly get to take time off, and no one can reach me, even if they try.
It's awesome. It's a good perk. So welcome, everybody. We're here for our Campground Owner Show normally that we have the third week of every month. Mr. Mike Harrison's here from CRR Lifestyle. Joe Duemig from At My Community. Simon Neal is here with us as a special guest. And I think we're supposed to have one other person here. I don't know if Sean didn't show up or not, but hopefully he'll make it here for the show a little bit later. Before we get started, I do want to thank our sponsor for today's episode. If I can find their little overlay thing, I believe it's Firefly Reservations. So they are an easy campground reservation software for RV parks and campgrounds, big and small. We got a brief little video we're going to play for them real quick, and then we'll be right back for the show. Just shout out to Firefly Reservations.
Did you know most campers prefer to reserve online? Are you missing reservations? Firefly makes it easy to run your campground and accept reservations online anytime. With Firefly, you can quickly message campers, simply handle ongoing reservations, and automate emails and payment processing, giving you back time to run your campground. You can start your free trial today. No credit card needed. Visit fireflyreservations.com to learn more.
All right, guys. Thank you again for Firefly. I really appreciate you guys sponsoring it. If you want to learn more, check out their website. What are we going to talk about today, guys? Lots have been happening. We're right in the middle of summer, busy camping season again. You take it away, Cara. Like, you should lead this show.
Yeah, I got a nice vacation. Well, I'd love to hear how things are going for everybody. It's I've been away for a couple weeks. How things been? I know I have been back since Monday, and I'm hearing some great things from some parks up here. Some of our big events, Calgary Stampede and lots of music festivals and all of those things are back finally for us up here in Canada, and so that's having a positive impact on a lot of our member parks, which frankly there's been some concern the last couple of weeks about we've been talking lots about gas prices and inflation and all of those things, and that really kind of potentially having some impact on reservations and stuff. So these events and stuff coming back has been really positive, I think, for those parks who are walking this interesting journey right now with trying to balance all of that stuff. But I'd like to hear from really, I guess, Mike, how are things down there for you guys?
Well, we're actually in slow season because, the death of the sun hits all of our properties. But it's interesting. We're up slightly in revenue over the last couple months, year on year. We're up considerably in July. However, the mix is very different. So we saw a lot less of the short-term transient guests, and actually we have more bookings for long-term seasonal, which isn't surprising considering, obviously the gas price changes and all the articles you read about, people canceling their destination trips. And we are a short drive destination mostly for LA and Phoenix and some of the other locations. So it's good. Clearly, a lower ADR doesn't help. The longer term, but the pace, for the rest of the year and actually into Q1, which is our season, has been healthy. So we've had this cautious approach the last couple of months with gas prices, kind of saying, short term, but long term will be okay, and that's kind of what it's been. So not really any surprises from what we thought maybe 60 days ago. It's kind of played out that way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's obviously just the dynamic right now is interesting. There's been a fascinating kind of shift in length of stay and those kinds of things that's unique to watch.
I think we should have Simon introduce himself real quick, because Simon is our guest. He's here not as a regular participant, although maybe he ends up wanting to be. You never know. From Europe, runs a super cool company called CampMap. Simon, do you want to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about what you guys do?
Yeah, so I'm British originally, but I've been living in Croatia now for around 10 years, which is a real camping super hotspot in the European market. And yeah, 2 years ago, I founded CampMap, which is a startup that has a mission to map in super fine detail all of the campsites in the world, and then share all of that information with as many people and companies as possible to help make the industry function better and improve guest experience.
So when you say super fine detail, what does that mean? Because we obviously have seen all the different companies who do like 360 tours and then site maps from satellite
Yeah.
views and drawings. And so what does it mean for you?
Yeah, so there's lots of maps out there. They're all kind of generic and schematic, and virtual tours are great, but they all lack real context and real structured information. So our maps are professional grade. They're built with professional software, and we map every single feature we can see. So every single camping site, facility, building, track, path, pool, um, activity, anything that you can see in the site or interact with, we map that, in a structured, professional way, and that information then becomes accessible through our mapping app, which you can interact with and touch, upload information to, but also through our API. So we can share that with other apps. You mentioned virtual tours. The great thing about a virtual tour is you feel like you're there, but you lack a bit of context. You get lost sometimes. So you can use our map inside the virtual tour. That's fine. And that allows you to switch between the two domains.
So you say your goal is to map all the campgrounds in the world. Obviously a big endeavor, right?
Yeah.
How long does it take to scale? Do you have to have somebody in person to do this?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And ideally, we always visit a campsite or a campground that we want to map. That's the whole mechanics of that is included in our business model and it functions. But generally, we can map a campground in a couple of days. So small, medium size, or maybe it's a week or 2 weeks. So super large campground. And then scale that globally, it's just a manpower issue. So we're doing at the moment 100 campgrounds per year. We're a small team. We've only been a company for a little over 12 months, but we want to scale that up to 1,000, 2,000 campgrounds a year that we're mapping and putting into our system and then sharing with everybody.
Do we have a sense of, Cara, I think there's how many private campgrounds in Canada? 3,000?
Yeah, there's just under 2,800 private campgrounds in Canada from coast to coast that we're aware of. There's the odd kind of smaller operation that I don't think we've counted yet.
Counted. I think there's probably, 4,000-ish? I don't know. Joe, do you have any idea?
Oh, I think
in the U.S.
The number that I always hear, not necessarily private, but the number of campgrounds I hear in the U.S., typically people say 16,000.
Oh, yeah. Just private.
I don't know. I wouldn't venture to guess.
Well, I guess Simon's going to do all of them, though, so he's got to do all the... Yeah. We're just trying to figure out how much work is ahead of you, Simon. That's really what I'm trying to figure out.
I mean, in Europe, there's 28,000 in Europe, which are recorded, and we know where they are and how big they are. And, that's our first kind of mission. We're spreading quickly already, but we're very interested in the US market too. We've kind of proven the concept of how we do this and how long it takes, how much it costs. And like I said, after that, it's just scaling it with more manpower.
Well, Brian, I doubt he's limited. You're not limiting yourself to private campgrounds, are you? If you had a deal with a municipality or a state, province, you probably are completely good with that, right?
Yeah, we're open to it. Like I said, we want to include every campground we can, and we want to do that in a standard way. So in the end, the data set that will be made is the same for every campground. The information that can be added or read from our database will be the same. So we'll form a really nice platform, or we call it digital foundation, for all sorts of products that people want to build, for reservation systems, booking systems, virtual tours, data analytics. We want to make our database available for applications like that. To look at the industry in really super fine detail, figure out trends, figure out better ways of doing reservations, dynamic pricing, yielding, fun things to do in campsites, geocaching games, anything you can think of. That's kind of the end users we see from our product.
Well, see, this is what kind of appeals to me, right? To dive a little bit more into. And Mike, we discussed data quite a bit. Joe, you've got obviously apps you designed for campgrounds, and I'm sure you have a mapping functionality inside there. And I know you work with APIs a lot. So what are the possibilities here? Like if you're providing an API, like I feel like mapping is great. And traditionally over here in at least the States and Canada, from what I've seen at most campgrounds, when you say mapping, it's a printed map. And that's it, or a PDF display of that map inside Joe's app, right? It's not really anything more than that. Am I correct, Joe? Or
yeah, mostly. There's other things that we can do, but I would say I don't know all of the ins and outs of Simon's tool. But one of the things that we get asked for probably the most is site, like directions to a site, not to a site, to a location, and so basically driving directions at a campground. That is a very, very common ask that we get from our customers. And for us, that's kind of quite a heavy lift. And so if we can integrate with a product that does that, that is a large positive to us.
So driving directions to the campground itself?
No. Driving directions or walking directions to, I'm at my site or I pull up my app and I want to go to the bathhouse. How do I walk there without walking through someone else's site?
Okay, that's cool.
That's actually a very common ask that we get from campground owners.
Yeah, so that's one of our asks, and we've solved that problem. So as soon as our map is made, from your smartphone, when you arrive for check-in, you can get a QR code that's going to give you GPS navigation directly to your site, or you can search toilet, shop, restaurant, and it will take you anywhere you like. Just like Google Maps.
Do you want to share one, Simon? Like you can share your screen if you want. I feel like we're just talking about it, and it would be cool to just see it.
Yeah, sure. Just give me a second.
I agree.
Because I like again, there's so many companies doing maps, but if you can create, again, the open API functionality that then people can build things on top of or use that data, it kind of opens the door to all kinds of crazy new things. So.
Yeah.
All right. So we can see it. You can switch back to yourself, but you have to scroll on the tab to make it work. So, yep.
Okay.
So just
right.
point and click wherever you want.
Just pick kind of a small, medium-sized campground. So this is our MVP, right? So we're only 12 months open as a company, so we're really working hard on the design and the UI and everything, but the data behind it and the function works. So you can zoom in and you see all of the roads here. You can see every camping site with a number, some icons for toilets, for the shop, for the pool. Where it gets really interesting is you can click on anything. So you can click on this site. I'll just maybe zoom in a bit. Okay, and then you get basic information, the pricing tier, the size in square meters or square feet. And then you can click and you'll see a 360 photo. You can look around the site completely, see where the shade is, and go back. And this works for any facility inside the camp. So here we have the pool. We can go to more details. You get another picture. Or you can click on a 360 photograph. And then, of course, every single feature, you have a go-to button, which you can click. Okay, I'm not actually in the campground, so this is maybe going to be a bit wild. See where we go. Okay. So yeah, it's taken the closest point in Earth to this campground, and then it's showing me, I need to walk around here to get to the pool. Or if I'm walking, I can go a shorter route. So GPS navigation is working. Adding data to any feature in the campsite is working. All of these features are super accurate. Exactly where they are in real life is what's shown on the map. And, we want to expand to almost any amount of information, whether it's pricing, reservation information, opening times, restaurant menus, whatever. You'll be able to input this into your own map and manage this yourselves as a campground. And then, of course, you can input, you can drop this map into your own website as an iframe, or use our app, or connect through the API to access all the data that way and do whatever you like with the maps.
So I have a question. I'm probably your customer in a way. So, you know, if I think about somebody like Campground Views, At My Community, you know, your company, how do I sift through the multiple options? Because what I hear is I need 3 separate apps or programs at least, right? And then my head goes $, $, $. How do I figure out, you know, how many should I use? Which should I use? Which is best for me? Because what I look at is, you know, is this cool to have or is it a need to have? And then how do I figure out which one to select? And Joe can answer that too, because it's the same, you know.
Well, I'll say coming from my end, we're not the same product. We have
Right.
a smaller sub feature that does some of this, but we can't, and I don't see us ever being able to ourselves doing the end-to-end point-to-point directions.
And I'm sorry, Joe, to interrupt. I should have clarified. I meant all of the add-on features from online platforms. Your At My Community, which is obviously the website skin or app skin, I guess, a better way to put it. You know, Campground Views, Simon's product. How do I sift through what I need and what I should spend on?
Okay, I'll answer it. Nobody else wants to talk. I think it's really just an ROI perspective, Mike. I think it's just, and that's going to be different for every campground. And it's not always ROI from a, does this get me more reservations, but does this get me more happier guests who leave better reviews, who spend more money, who come back more weekends out of the year, who do whatever, right? And so I think it's going to be different. Do you have a large subset of people who are asking for the enhanced features that Simon's map offers? Do you have a large subset of people who are like, I wish you had an app at your campground. It'd be super cool to find activities. Do you offer activities? Or are you just more of like a stop overnight type journey that might not need an app? So I think that's probably a generic form of an answer that I think you're asking. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. And I think it's, you know, we're going through those processes right now to determine, you know, Campground Views or CampApp or CampMap. You know, do we need an At My Community, or is our website good enough? And trying to understand, you know, what that, like you said, your ROI is, you know, and what we need versus what would be cool to have. How does that help us grow, you know, our functionality? So
I know from our end, we surely haven't looked to see how the ROI of a product like Simon's or Campground Views or Campsite 360 or any of the other 360 tours. But in terms of what Simon is doing is one of the things that our campground owners are asking us for. So they've obviously felt the pain and the burden of those point-to-point directions on their property. That is enough that they've asked us about it. And this is we've probably been asked that about 10 to 15 times by different owners that are customers of ours. And so
and it solves another problem too, right? It stops people from irritating other campers by cutting through their sites and going the wrong way and treading through grass that they shouldn't and walking their dogs places or whatever, right? Driving their cars different places. There should be a way to avoid bears too. Like, can we tag bears at a rural campground, and where the bear moves, like it automatically adjusts your route around the bear so you don't get eaten?
It's possible, yeah.
You
just put a GPS collar on them and you can plug it into our map, no problem.
Is that included with your service, Simon? Will you put the GPS collar on?
Premium level subscription, sure.
All right, deal. But yeah, I think there is a lot of use cases here for it. So I think it's a really good question, Mike. And I don't think it's very easy to answer it in a short, condensed blanket statement for all campgrounds.
Yeah, so one thing I'll say is,
I think it's really just going to depend on... Yeah, go ahead.
We have a very large campground in Myrtle Beach that we stayed at when we were very new. And so we stayed at this campground, and I had, at the time, 4 children. They were all little, and we wanted to do one of the activities. The thing is on the handout that they gave us, it was named something and what's on the map, and it was hard to find on the map anyway. And this is not an uncommon occurrence, right? And so, like, that's why we did certain things in our app, is we ran into this problem. And so we made it so that you go to you see an activity, you click on the map button, and shows you where on the property it is. And then Simon takes it a little bit further and gives you direction. And so, like, that particular campground, we went to the activity, and there was, obviously no one there because the maps didn't match up. There was probably 10 people there, and we were 4 of the children. Since then, that campground actually came to us and told us that we increased their activity attendance. And so you're spending a lot of money on labor for activities. And so if you're already spending that money, to get more people involved in them is a big benefit, right? So, that's where they saw their ROI. Other campgrounds obviously see their ROI in a different manner.
Yeah, I think just to add some of the feedback we got to our product is, one of the huge things is the information problem, which you've kind of touched on. Guests want to understand where things are in the campsite, camp rules, when shop opens, when it closes, what I can buy there. And in the past, it's asking reception or asking the staff. So you're kind of cutting out that huge amount of workload and stress that gets put on your staff. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, understanding how the campground is performing as a business. So I think now consumers really want choice. They want to see before they buy. And what we want to do, this is the pain point why I created CampMap, is that I wanted to be able to see the exact spot in the campground where I wanted to stay before I booked. And we can enable that level of choice because we show the information, and then we also have the framework of the structure to capture occupancy per site. And it's up to the reservation systems to manage that, but our maps allow that to be managed visually. For the guests, so they can see before they buy, they can choose exactly which spot they want. And I'm sure they're going to pay a premium for that. If you say, okay, you can guarantee your exact site, it's perfect for your RV or your tent, it has 2 trees for your hammock, would you pay a $10 premium to book that site? I think most guests would. So you can improve in that respect. And the second one is, understanding the performance of your campsite from feedback from guests, make it much easier. They can take a picture of a problem, send it straight to the app, or, ask them to review every single site, or to see through the bookings, visualize as a hotspot which are my highest performing sites and lowest performing sites and why. And I think 10, 20 years from now, all of this information needs to be connected, talking to each other, and in a digital world. And I think camping industry is quite under digitized in that respect, that there's lots of generic information about campgrounds, but very little about what's inside them, the really fine detail. And I think that's what we're trying to attack. And we think, we can improve the business performance and the guest experience by doing so.
Simon, do you see the same type? Oh, sorry, Brian.
No, good. No, good.
I was just going to ask if you see the same type of, or level maybe of resistance by operators to allow the guests that freedom to choose their site that we see here. I have lots of campground owners who are very hesitant to give their guests that freedom of choice on their property. Do you experience that same type of hesitancy in Europe?
Yeah, it's the same, and it's there. And I think it's because there isn't a better way to do yield management than keeping everything quiet and stuffing people in the gaps when they arrive. That's one way to do it. That's not great for your guests. And I think the other way to do it is to show them the availability and say, look, if you want to book on these dates, which means we get a 2-day gap in this site, okay, then the price goes up to cover that gap. And you can say, if you come 2 days earlier, it's cheaper. Or if you want these dates, the price goes up. So I think that's the pushback, is they see problems with yield management, but actually you can manage that much better through smart algorithms and dynamic pricing. So you end up maybe even making higher revenue.
Yeah, I would also say that the varies by PMS system as well. We love letting our guests choose our site because we get site lock fees. So that's pure incremental revenue for the year, and it's considerable. Actually Heather Blankenship did a session at the Arvik, the outdoor conference a couple of years ago, and for some of her sites, she was charging $100 for a site lock fee, right? I mean, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars, and then a PMS like CampSpot we'll also do grid optimization, so that you limit the you enhance the ability for overlap to make sure that it'll move sites that aren't site locked, so that you don't have these big gaps, of holes. And clearly you can turn it off and on as you want. But if you do allow the guests to pick those sites, you can charge whatever you want for a site lock fee. And that can be tens of thousands of dollars a year, which goes all to the bottom line.
Absolutely. Do you think that has an impact on your increased Q2 numbers?
Oh no, we've been doing that since we opened. We modified it after we opened, but certainly every month we learn a little bit more about other incremental revenue. Simon had mentioned dynamic pricing, and Brian's heard me mention this. I think in general the RV industry is years behind everybody else with digitalized and revenue management, but they're starting to catch up in various degrees, and dynamic pricing is a step in that right direction. So through some of the enhancements that the PMS system has, or our own analysis, we've been able to grow incrementally every year. Because now it's, if you're sold out, you're just trying to maximize what you're sold out on, whether it's revenue or mix or site lock or ancillary revenue or, whatever it might be.
Well, and we talk about it, and I think everyone agrees that the industry as a whole is a little behind technologically, but it's kind of funny that we've kind of, the industry as a whole has kind of jumped over what some of, what a hotelier does, because they don't have room lock fees too much. I mean, there's some boutique places that have something like that, but that is not, dynamic pricing is extremely common. I mean, that's what they do, but they don't have locking in your room at most places. And so that's kind of where it's kind of jumped over that in that one technological place,
Yeah, no, I will say what is fun for me to see, coming from 25 years in the lodging business, is that the RV industry has all these startups popping up, App My Community and CampApp and Campground View, and it's fun to kind of, in some ways, they have eclipsed the hotel industry and some of the innovation and uniqueness and offerings of what you can do. And mainly because there's not so many restrictions with brand requirements like a Marriott or Hilton or some of those things where you can integrate a lot more easily with the APIs. But it is definitely fun to see the camping world in many aspects eclipse the hotel world in the innovation side, which is pretty cool, because there's really very, very few hotels in the country and the world that have that level of detail like your app has, Simon, your map has, or Joe's app. So it is pretty cool to see how it's going.
I'd like to. Okay, so let's propose this. Let's just throw something out there and put everybody on the spot. Simon, first, I want to know how much does this typically cost? And I guess if you don't know the conversion, that's fine. We'll convert it later. But in euros, it's fine. But how much does it cost a typical size, medium size campground or RV park to get one of these maps done?
Yeah, so we charge per site. So if it's 100 sites campground, it's one price, and if it's 200, it's pretty much twice. We charge around $5 per site at the moment, and that's for an annual subscription. We have 3 levels, so that's kind of down the middle price. And then we have an onboarding fee, which covers, the first time we need to create the map, which is the highest amount of workload. And then it's, that maintenance per year. So it's pretty cost effective. I mean, we're selling pretty well, and I think the value kind of is seen by the campgrounds we have. And that's, for our map, you get an iframe, stick it in your websites, API connections, and all sorts of stuff.
All right. So, one, I'm just curious, Joe, you work with a lot of small campgrounds. Mike, you obviously own a couple. Is this cost effective for campgrounds? From what you've heard, Joe, is this is that numbers that you could digest?
That's an annual price, just to make it clear.
$5
per site per year. Yeah.
Well, so I would imagine for my customers, it would depend on what the startup price is, and how many sites they have and their needs. So every campground owner is going to be different. Same with us. Yeah. Our pricing, we'll give it to one campground owner, and they'll say, "Please don't double it next year," because they would pay it. And then we'll go to another campground owner and they'll say, "That is the most expensive thing I've ever heard of." And so, everyone has different opinions.
Yeah, just as a generic kind of blanket, like it's not. It seems reasonable to me.
the pricing doesn't seem way out of line with the other type of mapping softwares I've seen. And so I wouldn't.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it seems honestly, that's what surprised me. It seems in line with some of the other map things we've seen, but it appears on the surface to be a little bit better, and a little bit being maybe an understatement. From the traditional, not
I think from mapping for sure. From straight up mapping, definitely.
Right.
But as Mike was saying, you have your trade-offs, right? Of your what you're focusing on. Is it the map? Is it the 360 views? And then are you paying those together and doing both? And then how do they work together, meld together, and how they look? All of that stuff is going to go into what the most important thing for the campground owner is. And it's obviously going to depend on the clientele they're bringing in, the types of amenities they offer, and if they're trying to provide ease of use while they're in the campground or ease of use before they get there. I think those are kind of two different things. And those two different products provide different things. I don't know, like the 360 tours, I think are a little less going to be used while you're on site, whereas Simon's Map would be used on site. And then I think Simon's Map is usable when you're picking, but a 360 tour might be a little more context for the end user.
I think too, as an operator, you're like, I know I worked with a few park management software companies, and they kind of build in map building fees and stuff too. So, I think as an operator, especially a smaller operator, you're in this position where like how many maps am I going to pay for, and those kinds of things, right? It goes back to what Mike was saying about using all this variety of tools. It does end up getting, I think, for some operators to a point where it can be cost prohibitive to choose multiples for sure.
Well, that's why I asked. Yeah, and that's why I asked the question in the beginning, because I think every campground owner is going to ask the same question: is which one do I need and how much? So I started, of course, Googling as Simon's talking. I'm looking, and then I've looked at Joe's product a couple times, and I've looked at Campground Views, and then we're working with CampSpot on their API, and all of a sudden I'm up to like $12,000, right? And then like another $6,000 annual, right? And so it's like, that's a lot to add, in a year. And I'm a larger resort, obviously. So those are the things that you have to balance, what you want, what your needs are. And as Joe mentioned, it's going to vary depending on campground, what you want, what you need, and what you have. If somebody doesn't have a PMS like CampSpot and they've got something with less offerings, it doesn't have a good map already, or doesn't have site lock fees, or doesn't have, pictures, or, isn't working with a great marketing team like Insider Perks, that's certainly going to be something that's going to be head and shoulders, above what they have.
Well, I think a lot of it too is tracking how, like, sometimes you're going to have to try some of this stuff, whether it's Simon's or Campground Views or whatever else, and then you're going to have to do some very heavy tracking of the clicks and the analytics and the behavior and the results and the ROI from monetary spend and all that kind of stuff. And then you're going to have to kind of say, I've used this for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. It's gotten me this, cut it, or it's gotten me this, keep it. And some of it's just going to require park owners who don't know the answers to these questions for themselves yet to track it, and then not waste money, but sort of waste money for 3 or 6 months to get that data and determine it.
We're always willing to pilot it, for a US product. If you need a US product and you want a partner for free, we could be a good old, reference.
You heard it here first. Recorded.
I don't know. Do you have any US clients, Simon?
We've had a few inbound contacts. We haven't really been pushing it at the moment, but actually the last month or so, I've started reaching out to talk to a few people. And, we're actively looking for partners in the US side of things, and that goes across the board. Integration partners, we've talked to a couple, reservation systems, and campgrounds is kind of the next step.
I feel like probably we could help you, Simon, if we saw like a better demo of your product and got to understand it, things like that, right? Because it looks appealing on the surface. And, we've got some connections to reservations providers in the United States. Mike obviously runs a really large, soon to be multiple, really large, opened, ground up, really luxury resort developments that would give you a great testimonial piece to it, right? In the States. Cara works for the National Canadian Camping Association, who's always looking for supplier members, which would give you a whole audience in Canada, right? And then obviously Joe might be interested in integrating some of it into his maps with your API. We've got a developer we just hired who works with APIs too. our marketing company. So I feel like you're talking to the right people, Simon. Welcome.
Yeah. Glad I agreed to join. No, that's fantastic. I mean, we're really open to anything at the moment. We're a startup. We have an open mind. We have a big vision, but we can't do all of it on our own, and we need to learn from our partners and our users and things like that. So very welcome to talk a bit more.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't conduct personal business on the show live in front of everybody else, but I feel like it would be useful. Like, I would like to have a demo of it. So if you can reach out to me after the show, I'd love to see a demo. And if Mike and Joe or Cara wants to join, then we can all do that at the same time. But
Team demo.
I think it'd be cool. So
Yeah, sure.
what else do we have, guys? What else has been happening in the campground industry?
Well, I just got, I don't know about what's happening in the campground industry, but we were gone the entire month of June camping. And actually, we leave again tomorrow to go camping, that's a small weekend. But month of June. Sorry, Karen?
Said life's rough. Hey, Joe.
Sometimes. And it can be because, like on the road, I still work. It's just kind of sometimes hard to get as much done as I should be otherwise, but it's things for us. It's things we still do. We have clients that we want to visit. We have potential clients that we would like to see as well. And then, in fact, the reason we were on our trip was to go to the Florida Outdoor Hospitality Conference. And so we were out for a month. We had a change of plans that we had to make. And so we ended up staying a little longer. So we had to book really tight timelines. And so in mid-June, I had to call up. We're trying to stay at people that are potential clients. So we're staying at typically nicer places. But it was a Monday afternoon. We were trying to get 2 days. And two of the good experienced places down in Georgia looked solid. They couldn't get us in. And so we kind of looked around. Well, Rose found Hilton Head National RV in Hilton Head, obviously. And it's a new resort. So it's only 3 months old. So it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. And it was fairly open. It was about a third full just because it doesn't have enough people that know about it. Same with Tolona Ridge in Georgia. They've been open for about 9 months. Another gorgeous resort. But they're kind of easy to get in when they're new. So that's one thing I'm seeing is a lot of the newer resorts, they're kind of easy to get into right now. So I think that shows that there's a place that they can be upping their game with marketing for the newer resorts. I think if they're that open, there's probably some marketing gains to be made there.
It's interesting that you say that, and I know you still have some thoughts, but I just wanted to break in when you're talking about marketing specifically. Because I was having this conversation with somebody else last night, and I'm sure Cara can kind of relate to this too. Like the provincial parks up here in Alberta and BC are packed full, but there are a lot of other parks that are busy, but not as busy as they perhaps could be had they have the same awareness that the provincial parks do. Like there are a lot of people, everybody I talk to in Alberta has no idea there are even private campgrounds in Alberta. But that's a lack of marketing, just like the newer resorts have a lack of marketing, just like, a lot of other campgrounds do too.
Yeah,
Well,
it is a big hurdle for us. We consistently hear, even on, the private campground association in Alberta on their social media pages, we constantly get comments from consumers talking about provincial parks. And I have to consistently say, we are privately owned parks. We have nothing to do with those provincial parks. Please connect with these guys. I have had some recent conversations with Alberta Parks about doing a better job of partnering together so that during the reservation process, if consumers are looking to book in a certain park and it's full, I'd love to see us get to a point where, hey, this park is full, but there are these 4 private campgrounds within 20 kilometers of here or whatever, just mainly to keep guests, out camping. Regardless of where they camp, we want them to go camp. And that frustration that I hear from consumers about that the capacity issue stuff in our public parks, our provincial and national parks, risks some disenchantment with guests for sure.
Yeah, and the provincial parks then also, a lot of them probably have day passes and offer other amenities. And the whole point of having provincial and state parks is for people to go and experience the outdoors. So it's not like it's, going against their what they're there for. It just helps that.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, Alberta Parks has been really receptive. I think that's going to be to undertake. It's going to mean some interesting integration stuff that I've frankly been wrap my brain around if I want to at this point. So I don't know if that will come to life or what it will look like, but I would love to see us get to a place where we're more collaborative about that stuff.
Mike, I think you were going to say something before Cara started.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I live my life currently in the world that Joe's describing, as we're opening up another 3 resorts in the next, 4 to 6 months. And, the other resort is now, I guess, a few years old, but went through this. And I've probably visited, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 RV parks in the last year and a half of varying age, varying size, varying condition. And, clearly we do a lot of marketing, and it, took us a year or two to ramp up. So even with a lot of marketing, I think it is, what we've seen, especially at the older parks, is even if the quality is lower, there's such a loyal following. People come back to the same place every year, or they've got a lot of annuals, or seasonals that, been there for 5, 10 years. So I think some of it's, like to Cara's point, education. I think some of it is as these global booking sites continue to grow, where you can, like an Expedia, but, whether it's one of the other 10 or 15, Campendium or Good Sam or any of these other ones where you can search for a park and look for availability, that will help. But I do think it is just going to be, year to 2 year ramp time, for the new, and that's what we have built in on our time frames. And I mean, Joe, I've been to that, that park you mentioned. Obviously, it's right by our resort. I've been there a couple of times, and we were surprised by the vacancy as well. So, depending on pricing, depending on marketing, it's a lot of different factors, depending on density of the area, what's the park size. It's an interesting conundrum. And, Brian and I have talked about this a couple of times, trying to figure out, when will be the conglomeration of a booking app for RVs where you can go and put, where you want to stay, how many nights, and what the parks show up, and so I think that's got to be the next evolution, of our industry to help, with that.
I'd be fascinated to hear your hypothesis on that timeline, gentlemen.
Well, honestly, like, it's really not that hard to do if you have companies like Simon, like CampSpot, like anybody who opens their API. Once those APIs are open, a developer can take them all and put them all together and make it all searchable.
Well, so we've been, I mean, at this for 5 years, and I would say about 4 years ago, we started asking reservation vendors to provide an API so we could, make the app booking from our apps, rebooking more seamless. We also have a bunch of other ideas that we can do once we have that knowledge, their information. And so we've been asking for 4 years for that type of thing. And so now I would say so we've been asking them, and they say, well, our campground owners aren't asking us for that. I would say in the past year or two, the campground owners are asking us, well, do you integrate with them? And we said, well, this is the only thing we can do. We can go out to their website. So you can rebook. You rebook on their website, and it pushes the link. But now that campground owners are asking for it, they're starting to provide them. CampSpot just has a new API that came out. Other vendors are starting to add those on. And then what Mike is talking about with the booking sites, there's Spot Tonight that's they're working on something to make that happen. Book Outdoors is working on something to make that happen. We'll see. It hasn't been released yet. So those are in the works. There's people trying to make it happen. So I think I don't think the timeline is actually as long as I probably would have thought it was 4 years ago, when none of the vendors had APIs. And so I didn't know that it would be now. I thought it'd probably take a little bit longer.
Yeah, it just takes consumer demand, right? And the word integration changes. 4 years ago, do you integrate with CampSpot means to us, can you put a button on the web? Well, of course I can. What are you talking about? Yeah. But now it means API. And so It's interesting how that changes too.
And back to our previous point, I wasn't saying they're doing a bad job of marketing. We were there on a Monday. You know, seasonality and time matters. So we were there on a Monday. It's summer in, you know, southern South Carolina. And so, but I was just saying, you know, there's opportunities there, right? Because if the ones that are kind of on par, the similar resorts that are full, you know, there is a marketing opportunity. What it is, I'm not sure. That's Brian's job. But there's definitely one that's there. And the last thing I was going to say about our trip, unless you want to take questions, was I sent an email to Mike, actually. So we were driving up through Savannah, and I saw a sign for their new property. Is it Savannah Oaks?
Savannah Lakes.
Savannah Lakes, sorry. And as I was driving, I saw the sign, and I said, that branding looks very familiar to me. And so I had Rose look it up, and sure enough, it was one of their properties. I thought when I said it looked familiar, I thought it was their property, it's a different logo, but just enough that you know what brand it's from. And so I thought that was really nice.
Awareness stuff. Yeah, it's so good.
Yep.
That's
and I
Mike's
didn't even know,
vision, but our design. So.
Oh, I know.
Gotta take the credit, hey?
There you go. So, Brian, sorry I did not CC you on that email. Congratulations there.
Thank you. Well, that validates my branding speaker cred at the Canadian Outdoor Conference. So.
Yes.
There you go.
Absolutely agree.
What else is new in Canada, Cara? You haven't been here in a while, so what's come across your desk?
I was going to say, I have no idea what's new. I've been on vacation.
Well, you've been checking email since Monday.
Not really. I've been digging myself out of a mountainous hole of things since Monday. I'm updating campground listings left, right, and center, and all of those things, which just tell me, you know, I think some of our operators are maybe using this time that normally their few years have been busier to look at some of their strategies and finish things up, edit their listings in various places, and things like that. We did have Canadian camping and RVing week at the end of May that went really well, and we had some political support for that event up here. And now we're prepping for our September celebrations. We have our camping appreciation weekend in September 9th to the 11th. So we have several campgrounds signing up to participate for that event. We're raising money for care camps at those events, and parks are doing various things. We've got silent auctions and bingos and parties and all kinds of things to raise money. So there will be kind of a ramp up of excitement on social media and in our email campaigns and stuff to get more parks involved and start spreading the word to guests to start booking for that weekend after Labor Day.
Awesome. I guess I'd be remiss to ask you about this. We've had a couple conversations while you were gone on the show about it, Cara, but I'm just curious, how is inflation and everything else impacting parks in Canada? We've talked about it in Europe and we've talked about it in the States while you were gone, but.
Mm-hmm. I think obviously there's the same things that I'm sure everyone is dealing with. Costs of product, everything you use has gone up. And so that's translating to some park owners I've talked to talking about relooking at their rates and things like that, which is a tough conversation to have right now when gas prices are kind of through the roof. And, you know, I think that dynamic is interesting too. We have certain areas of this country where Alberta specifically, where the provincial government has been supportive about fuel rebates and removing the provincial portion of the gas taxes and things like that to help ease some of that burden off of Albertans. And so I think we're seeing that translating down into, you know, more Albertans camping than maybe in some of the other spots. And so that's probably valuable. But overall, I think I have to say, I have had several communications in the last few days since I've been back, specifically asking me about trying to connect with potential investors and exploring the idea of selling parks. And so I don't know, it would be pure speculation for me to say that that's in relation to any of this stuff. But, you know, I think some of that financial burden, plus, you know, we're looking at the Bank of Canada just raised interest rates quite a bit. I'm sure that's impacting some of our members and their bottom lines too. So it's a broad issue. I think all that doom and gloom aside, we do have this really fortunate position in this industry where we kind of have the ability to continue to harness campers long into the future who maybe will just travel a bit less far, and that will motivate them, I think, to re-strategize branding campaigns and marketing and stuff like that too, to more of a local flair or whatever. But I always say of all the people I know, campground owners and operators are the most adaptable, in my opinion, on the planet. And so I have confidence that they'll pivot and do whatever, pivot, that famous word, do whatever it takes to kind of keep rolling. And if not, we'll see some sales. I think there's some big shifts happening up here. Lots of bigger groups looking to purchase some properties, existing properties, and develop some new ones. And that's going to change all of this conversation, I think, as well. And the way the market goes, that's going to set a lot of consumer expectation for certain things like just high level kind of resort level expectations. And that has all kinds of waterfall effect too. So it's going to be an interesting couple years, I think, in this industry, which, I mean, it's been an interesting past couple years. The next couple are going to be fascinating too.
Always fun and interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think adaptable certainly. And to be honest, it really fascinates me sometimes, going back to marketing just for a second, how varied some of, I think kind of the campground industry is one of the most, I don't know, different, if that's the word, from one park owner to the next, both in their goals and their styles and what they want to do and how they want to deploy it. And all, like we were driving here yesterday. We're up at Lake Shuswap or whatever, which is in BC. And we were driving around and seeing all the RV parks. They're literally right on the lake that don't have good entrance signs, that don't have appealing entranceways, that could just do a little bit better marketing on the ground and whatever else. And
but
going right here is, but I'm not saying they should. So this is
right.
my whole point, right? Maybe they don't want to, and that's okay. But
they're not motivated to because they're full. They're not motivated to because they're full.
Right.
So right. They have no occupancy available. Like they have no sites available. It's not. I mean, there are some great parks right along there that have done some incredible upgrades even in the last 10 years. I used to live out that way. So that's just been interesting to see for sure. But yeah, a lot of them are happy to do things the good old way because
they're always challenged otherwise.
Yeah, they're not they don't have the environment to push them to do those things because they haven't been challenged, like Mike says. And that may come if things continue to get tough on the inflation front and the fuel price front and interest rates and all those things. But I hope not. And I have confidence that, like you said, they're super adaptable. We also have this intense level of variability in this industry. So every property is different. Every single operator is different. And I would argue, as a former operator myself, every team is different. So I could go from, 1 year having this epic service level team that just knocks it out of the park to the next year struggling through that because my team members aren't cohesive, or there's some kind, or I'm shorthanded or whatever, right? So there's so many variables that impact those things. I think challenge is the top motivator for rising above. No question.
Simon, do you see these same challenges with the parks you've seen exposure to over the last year or so? I'm sorry we've been leaving you sitting there in the corner quiet for a minute.
No, it's okay. I mean, yeah, there's been loads of uncertainty around, but I think here in Croatia, where I am, where most of our customers are at the moment, northern Italy, they're in such a great position, with such a strong market with the German, the Dutch market, so close driving that I think the impact is much less here, and it's turning out to be a really strong summer so far. But yeah, in terms of the cost rising and everything else, that's definitely hitting home to the campgrounds. But the occupancy is high, and the campsites are pretty much full everywhere here. So yeah, uncertainty, but it's camping is delivering again. And I think, the new people camping now and the changes with the glamping and the mobile homes has really helped with that. I think maybe you got a bit of downside from the traditional camper, but then that's been filled in by the new camping generation who are coming now. So we'll see. I mean, this kind of a lump, it's happened these couple of years. Is it going to keep going up afterwards, going down, or staying the same? I don't know. We'll have to see.
Seems somehow we always find a way to keep going up, and I think we've got a lot of room to climb here before we have to worry. Is my sense so far of the way things are going. But yeah, to your point on challenges, just circling back to that for a second, like nobody ever wants a recession. Nobody ever wants competition. But maybe if there's one good thing that comes out of both of those, it's the push to be better, more adaptable, change with the times, those kinds of things. Not saying that we want that to make that happen, but sometimes if there's anything good that comes out of that.
Well, and that's the biggest part where I think Brian's correct in talking about those parks and what they're doing. And, if they're sitting on high times now, when there is, and they're not reinvesting at all, when it comes to a low time, well, now they're down in revenue. They might be up in some of their cost, and they now have to go and add those things. That's a terrible time to be trying to ramp that stuff up, have capital improvements on your property when you're in a low, right? I mean, that's what I would believe is it's a terrible time for that.
I think a lot of the campgrounds have been, I don't know, lucky or smart, but it was a huge amount of investment, I would say, the last 2-3 years that I saw everywhere, every single campground I've been to with the glamping and mobile homes. And that kind of just happened before this dip. So now they're kind of reaping the rewards of that, which is pretty lucky or smart, one of the two. But yeah, and now everybody is holding back on the investment and taking it easy.
Yeah, a bit more cautious, a bit more tighter on the purse strings right now to kind of wait out and see what's going to happen. I don't blame them one bit. And I think our consumers are doing the same things. I think they're waiting longer to book. They're not booking as far in advance, and they're maybe making different choices about distance and those kinds of things. But one thing is for certain is we will, I think, always see folks continue to camp and explore the outdoors and love the lifestyle. And so we're super fortunate. This industry is really, really, really fortunate, I think.
Awesome. All right, we only got a couple minutes left. Anybody have any parting final thoughts that we must hear about, must see? Simon, do you want to give your website? Tell people how to see your product?
Yeah, CampMap.com. So yeah, it's all in the name.
Super
just
complicated.
Google it and find us.
How did you decide on the branding for that super simple name? I like it.
Yeah.
That's a mystery, pure mystery.
You would have thought CampMap.com would have already been taken, but apparently not.
I had the idea just before bed one night, and the next morning I got up and checked on GoDaddy. It was a bit expensive, but I bought it, and I'm pretty glad that I did. Because now they're much more expensive, names like that.
Wow.
Awesome. Anybody else? Final thoughts? No? All right, cool. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. I want to thank our sponsor for the show once again, Firefly Reservations. Go check them out if you're looking for a new reservation system, fireflyreservations.com. Really appreciate them being the sponsor of the show. Cara, welcome back. Hopefully you'll be here next week again with me. I really struggle without you. Like, I cannot carry a show without you.
Shame. Oh, that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
Ever? Really? A low bar.
Yeah, I'll be here next week.
All right, awesome. Next week, we've got our RV industry focused show. So really appreciate you joining us again, Mike. Thanks as always from CRR Lifestyle, Joe from At My Community. We missed Sean today from 4 Points. He was coming on and off. I think he just had some bad connection issues. So we'll try to reschedule him for a future show. And as a reminder, you can see us all as a podcast after this. See us listen as a podcast after this on Google, Spotify, all those kinds of places, Apple, and other than that. So really appreciate you joining us, and we will see you all next week.
Thanks, guys.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for watching this episode of MC Fireside Chats, hosted by Brian Searl and Cara Csizmadia. Have a suggestion for a future show or want to see your campground or company as part of an episode? Email us at hello@moderncampground.com. Join us next week for another episode. And don't miss the latest outdoor hospitality news and commentary from around the world at moderncampground.com.